Hello, everyone. So it's really good to be back with you today, and we're really excited to talk to you about another teaching tip um, in our series on teaching reading. And so today we're going to talk about using the dictionary. I hope you enjoy this. Again, thank you for joining us. We ask that you like the page, share the videos with your colleagues and friends, and follow us to stay in tune with what all we're doing. So we'll go ahead. I know you're probably busy. Many of you are at home or at work or heading to work. And so we'll go ahead and get started. So first, I want to start with a short little story from Discovering Words with Malcolm X and Alex Haley. Malcolm X said, I became increasingly frustrated at not being able to express what I wanted to convey in letters that I wrote. And every book I picked up had a few sentences which didn't contain anywhere from one to nearly all the words that anywhere from one to nearly all the words that might as well have been in Chinese. I saw that the best thing I could do was to get a hold of a dictionary to study, to learn some words. And so this short story talks about perhaps the importance of a dictionary and how a dictionary can be critical in language learners' world, helping them connect to the vocabulary, helping them to, to connect to thoughts and ideas and be able to express themselves. However, I think today we think really differently about dictionaries than they did maybe 50 years ago in the 1960s. So our discussion today will think about teaching and learning and how dictionaries fit in the classroom. And then from there, we'll look at what goes into an entry in the dictionary. We'll look at the definition. Then we'll learn, or we'll talk about how do you learn or what could be learned from a dictionary entry, and then how to expand off of that entry. Where can you go from the single word? And then we'll think about a challenge that the dictionary may pose for us. So first, dictionaries in the classroom. I'm not sure how many of you like a dictionary in the classroom, and I think it really depends on what you want to happen in the classroom. Several years ago, when I began teaching ESL, many of my students, most of my students, would all arrive to class with these digital dictionaries, and they would hear a word, and suddenly 5-10 minutes of the class would be absorbed with maybe a student or several students focused entirely on looking at words in their dictionary, and we completely lost them in class. Whatever was being taught or whatever interaction was going on, the students tuned out, and that was something that I really hated. And so I purchased an iPad, and when a student would divert to their digital dictionary, well, I would grab my iPad and we would think about the word, and we would think about it as a class. I would share pictures of the word, so we'd do Google searches and look at connotations of the word and a variety of things that might be going on with a word or surrounding a word. And so I think there's some big differences that we can think about with the dictionary and whether we want to use the dictionary in the class or how we want to use the dictionary in class. And this can be really important. When you decide you want to use the dictionary, I think it opens the door that you must teach some things about the dictionary. You have to teach how to use the dictionary. You have to teach a lot of background information for the student to actually be able to use it effectively. And maybe every language offers similarities in their dictionary. Not every dictionary is the same. And so maybe it's important to kind of ensure that students are getting a good dictionary, using a good dictionary, and they understand the parts. And so here we have an image that just talks about or shows, displays a variety of pieces or all the pieces to an entry in the word or entry in the dictionary. And so it's important that if you're going to use a dictionary in the classroom, you first teach the anatomy of the entry. You want to look at what the word is and how the word is presented. And so the entry is presented as bold, and it generally is broken into its syllables. And those syllables are broken apart with a dot. And it's important for students to understand why that looks like that and what its purpose is. Following that, we have pronunciation, and generally that's an IPA. And it may be important to introduce IPA and help students understand what those symbols and how that pronunciation guide looks different than the spelling, the actual spelling of the word, and what it means, how to make that pronunciation. Additionally, you can see the abbreviated part of speech. And this gets into another issue that maybe when you're starting to introduce parts of speech, you're really getting a lot further ahead for some students than what they know already. So parts of speech are really important. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. But with the dictionary, it's important that they understand the different parts of speech and how those work and what they mean for using the word. Then you have the meanings, and that's another huge issue with using the dictionary, especially with students autonomously using the dictionary, them finding or negotiating which word, which meaning works best for what they're trying to do. And some dictionaries offer multiple, most dictionaries offer multiple meanings for a word. And so negotiating that can be really difficult for beginning students or even sometimes advanced students. And then other forms of the word. So often the dictionary presents multiple forms of the word so students can use it in different ways. Once students understand the anatomy or what's involved in a definition, well, then we want to start thinking about the definition. And this is a critical issue because what we want the students to do is to be able to use the dictionary effectively. And so I have a picture of a simple word from the dictionary. And so here we see how difficult it can be. Not this is not a major word or a difficult word, but it offers, here we see 6 different definitions. And so for a beginning student, them understanding the difference between all of these definitions and how they can be used in a sentence can be a really big deal. And so I think if you're going to use a dictionary in a classroom, it's important that you gauge which dictionary the students use. You also think about how the students are using it in class, and you devote a good amount of time to teaching how to contextualize words and use them correctly so that the students are not just going in, finding a word, and then using it incorrectly within the sentence. Next, we want to talk about some of the things that we can learn from the dictionary entry. So we've addressed this a little bit, but when you're looking at how to approach using the dictionary, perhaps these are 6 lessons that you can teach for using a dictionary. So we can teach how to spell in correct spelling or spelling forms from the dictionary. The dictionary provides the stable form, and that is probably the big function of the dictionary to make sure that people are spelling words uh, in a commonly across the space, across the community. Next, we can look at syllables, the syllables, and so this is helpful for pronunciation, and so helping students understand the syllables and how words are broken down can be really helpful. Pronunciation, the symbols, we talked about IPA, and so taking a class or two or some time to go over the pronunciation symbols, accenting where stress is on words, so that students are pronouncing words correctly, and they know where to go and look for those sounds. Is a key point to use in the dictionary. Parts of speech, we've talked about this a little bit already. Um, Sometimes when you get into parts of speech, we may only want to look at a few parts of speech generally, but the dictionary offers a multitude of parts of speech, and the intricacy of talking about all those parts of speech can be really confusing even for advanced or native speakers. And so discussing parts of speech, their function, and how a word can maybe have 3 or 4 or 7 or 8 different functions, different parts of speech within different contexts can be a real fun lesson. So parts of speech is an important part of learning how to use the dictionary. Irregular word forms. This is another key part to the dictionary. English language notoriously does weird things with words. And so helping students understand that and unwrangle that is really important. And so helping students see when a word is irregular, how it's conjugated different, can be really important. It seems strange, but all of those things come much, much, they come first before we ever get to the definition. You need to understand these other 6 things before you can really get to a definition and contextualize them and understanding a definition. But once the students have a grasp on the spelling and the symbols, so they can pronounce a word or present it, they can put the stress in the correct place. They understand the different parts of speech and how to form the word. Then we have the definition. And in this, we have to think about how the word is being used. And so, what's the context? Some of you may be familiar with the Urban Dictionary. And so that's another type of dictionary that looks at how words may be used colloquially or locally or in slang. And so, depending on the context, it may be really important to look at what a word would look like just in population and how that's really different and how people think about words and their meaning um, differently in different spaces. Helping students think through what the word means, what they're trying to express, and how to get to that is really the lesson when you're looking at definitions. And that can be a challenging lesson. So be sure that you take enough time to think about the different definitions that are in an entry and how they can be used. One of my favorite things to talk about is the synonyms. I think synonyms and antonyms perhaps um, are, are really a cool way to think about the language because they allow the language to build um, in ways that we may not really think about. A synonym kind of puts words with within the context of its family or a multitude of other words. It connects it to other ideas that may be similar. And so helping students to see these interconnections in families and how words are kind of related together can be really empowering. It can be a great way for the students to expand um, their personal dictionary or their personal corpus vocabulary, um, but it allows them to understand the words better. Um, I think another way of looking at this is through the antonyms. We often understand things um, in contrast better. And so in the picture here, we see a picture of a happy girl and a sad girl. And so looking at just basic emotions, this contrast, looking at antonyms, allows us to really get to a word and what the words mean maybe better because we're able to negotiate how the word is different from other words, as well as how the word is similar to other words. And so I think when you're teaching vocabulary or when you're teaching students, trying to get them to expand their vocabulary, synonyms and antonyms can be incredibly fun way to think about the vocabulary, think about words and their meaning, and how they connect with people. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about vocabulary and context and teaching vocabulary. To think about how students relate and build their vocabulary based on stories or their experiences with words. Finally, we want to think about maybe some challenges um, that come with the dictionary. Um, as a kid, and even now, I often hated when a teacher would tell me, "Well, go look up the word in the dictionary." I always struggled with spelling. It eluded me. There's certain sounds I just can't hear, and I would always tell my teachers, "I can't spell the word, so how am I supposed to look it up?" And it's a that's a good question. If you can't spell the word or you're unsure of how to spell it, then then how do you go through, especially a really good dictionary with hundreds of thousands of words in it, when you are really unsure? The English language, many of the sounds are the same, and then you have the schwa that is just a common sound for all the vowels, and so um, you it's important that when you're teaching how to use the dictionary, you you give students an opportunity to think about the different sounds that the vowels make and how they may look, um, as well as different combinations, how different combinations of letters, consonants can sometimes make different sounds that may be similar, and when they're trying to spell them or look them up, they'll need to think about these things. So really happy that you've joined us. If we're going to go to a discussion at this point, but before we do, I want to thank you for coming in, and we ask that you like, share, and follow the page, and we hope that you have enjoyed this. I'm going to stop sharing and go to the screen to see if anyone has any questions. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then we'll go ahead and end this session. If you would like, you will load this into onto Facebook and YouTube. Go ahead and put your questions in the comments. We'll come back to them. Um, but thank you again for joining us. We appreciate you listening, and hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thank you all, and you have a good day.